is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Good morning and welcome to Inside Texas Politics. We're a little more than halfway through this legislative session right now, and attention is turning to the House. How will it handle the legislation the Senate is passing? One of the most watched bills right now limits the increase on property taxes. Representative Drew Springer in studio this morning. The Republican from Munster is part of the Ways and Means Committee, among others, which will take up that bill. And joining the questioning, as always, is Bud Kennedy of the Star-Telegram. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming in, Drew.
Yes, Drew, good morning.
Pleasure to be here. You made a drive for us, so we appreciate that.
Glad to.
Let's start with the property taxes, too. The cities and counties say this bill would limit how much would limit how much they can increase property taxes. And cities and counties say that will complicate local government and squeeze budgets for police departments or fire departments, etc. What's your reaction to that? What do you tell them?
First and foremost, it puts what they can raise to without having voter approval. So they can raise it to whatever they want to. They just have to then, if they go above 5%, 4%, whatever we settle on, just like they do today with 8%, they have to go back to the voters and get permission. Part of it is, though, today, it's very hard for the voters to do that because they have to petition their government to make that change. Right. One of the things we're looking at is making that an automatic election if that's the case.
Do you think the House will strengthen what the Senate passed?
I think the House is fairly close in line, although I will say one thing. I mean, I'm going to look to amend the bill for a lot of my small rural counties. One of the issue is unfunded mandates. So for new unfunded mandates, I'd like to see that not counted in that percentage, and that way if they go above 4 and the voters say, why didn't you get to vote on it? You say, well, the state legislature pushed new bills to us, and you've got to pay for them.
Now, you've got another bill that's interesting to me. Cities know how much sales tax is coming in, but they don't know exactly how much comes from which store. The stores don't want to lose that competitive edge of having the cities know exactly how much sales they're doing. But your bill would expose how much.
The bill would allow it, but again, on that bill, it only allows basically the tax person to be able to see it. So the mayor, the city council, economic development, they can't see that information and be able to use it against them. And so we made sure that that is in the bill. To be able to do that.
And now, go ahead.
No, let me return briefly to property taxes and an argument that some have made that if lawmakers really want to impact how much people pay for property taxes, why not make this bill, this SB2 bill, apply to school property taxes as well? That's the biggest chunk that everyone writes out every year.
It is, and we have seen a shift going from what the state has paid to the locals because of that high growth in appraisals, but we've seen that fluctuation over the years. That being said, I would like to see that be the case as well. I think we should have been tied to it. That would have had the property tax probably down at about 80 cents, but that's not what's in front of us this year.
You mentioned the taxation of big box stores and the appeals and their appraisals. Talk about that bill.
Sure. I've got House Bill 27, a speaker number bill. And what we've seen is that companies like Lowe's have challenged their appraisals, saying we should be appraised even though they're in a brand new location in a great growth area. They should be valued as though they were out of business and bankrupt, even with some of the deed restrictions they put on themselves. If this continues on throughout all commercial property in the state of Texas, we would see homeowners' rates on a shift of taxes probably go up 50%. It's one of the comptroller's biggest issues. He wrote a big article about it. It would cost the state about $8.5 billion if we don't get this in check now.
So could I get my house taxed as if it's vacant and dilapidated?
Yeah, you would want to think that we would all make that same argument, but
that's amazing. Talk about the fake letters. You're in a position where you have both the rural schools, and when the school voucher debate comes up, you're kind of in the middle. You have a lot of rural schools, but you've got some forged letters from constituents.
Well, yeah. And so I've done 35 town halls, talked in 22 counties, visited everybody. I think I know where my constituents stand on this issue. And also in my district office, over about a 3-week period, I get over 500 letters saying we want to support school choice. I start looking at them, and then when I see the one that was Representative Rick Hardkessel, who I replaced, who I know didn't support it, I question the integrity of all of those. And I think that there was 17,000 letters that have been sent to about 35 rural conservative representatives.
Just wallpaper in your office to make you think.
Yeah, and and has nobody's name of who sent it, who sent on whose behalf. You question whether or not it came from which side is trying to influence you.
And how will you vote on that?
Right now, as the bill is drafted, I'd vote against it. It hurts rural schools.
Drew, you're on the House Redistricting Committee as well, too. And another member we've had on this program recently, Eric Johnson, a Dallas Democrat here, he's asking for a hearing after that panel of federal judges ruled that some congressional districts discriminate against minority voters. Should the committee explore that?
You know, it was one of the things. I think we've got to know further where that court case goes before we dive into it. It was one of the reasons I asked to be on redistricting. In case the courts forced us to be able to do that, I wanted to be at the table, especially the guy with 22 counties.
You have a huge district that runs all the way over to the eastern side of the Panhandle. Several bills, speaking of redistricting, several bills out there also would revise redistricting and set up a state commission. Is that a concept the state should investigate?
You know, I'm assuming that I think Representative Howard's the one who's filed one of those.
Right.
You know, it may get a hearing on it. From what I've looked at, I wouldn't support the legislation now. You know, I think that we look at this from representatives. We're elected to make these, and if people think we're not doing correctly when we draw these maps, we've got courts in check if we get out of line legally. And so I think from that standpoint, we're better served that way.
And quickly talk about the situation small towns are in when convicted sex offenders move in. You've got a bill. All the trend, the argument is against local control, more control at state level. You want to give more local control in small towns.
We do. I mean, I've been a big fan of, you know, government should be at the right levels. And when it comes to figuring out your setbacks, small towns have been left behind, those below 5,000. Large towns like Dallas and Austin, they can change their setbacks. Small towns can't. I've got 46 of them. I believe they should have that right.
Small towns can regulate where sex offenders live. They can't now, but you want
They can go. They can only go to 5. They're set at 500 feet now. This bill would give them the ability to have a 1,000-foot setback.
And Drew, final topic here too. Speaker Strauss says it's time to tap the rainy day fund. You can't just balance the budget with spending cuts alone. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts is, you know, we've got $10 billion in now. We're projected to get $2 billion more in. It's hard to say we should grow our savings account at the same time we're going to make big cuts to a lot of programs in education and everywhere else. So I'm okay with that $2 billion of new money coming in, being used, and that way when we come back in the 86, we still have $10 billion sitting there.
And finally, Governor Abbott weighed in the other day on the state's bathroom bill. Does the Senate's bathroom bill deserve a hearing in the House?
I think it does, especially for my constituents. My constituents, especially when it comes to 16-year-old daughters in high school, in the locker room specifically, they want to see those kids protected, and I support that.
Great. Representative Drew Springer from Munster, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure as always.